Patricia Dunn of Merrill Lynch. Good evening, Pat.
Good evening, Paul.
So how are you tonight?
I am terrific.
You're terrific.
Hi, Pat.
Okay, well that's great. So we've seen this transition, or we're in the midst of this transition from, in the financial services industry, from, let's say, portfolio management to wealth management. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what the difference is, and then what this means for the average person, and what it means for maybe the financial services industry.
Great. Let's start first with where this idea came from. And I think that really this originated from the fact that we had two bear markets within a single decade. And this was more than just about watching your portfolio lose value. This rocked investors to their core. We had retirements postponed, we had whole careers that were downsized, and the whole concept of how to climb the corporate ladder changed dramatically. And I think that this idea bubbled up from both the investors and the professionals who served them, because they realized that the traditional conversation between an investor and their advisor, that is, how did I do, how did my portfolio perform versus the benchmark, had become an exercise in frustration. In 2008, the S&P 500, as you know, lost 37%. When the investor asked their advisor, well, how did I do? And the advisor said, oh, Paul, you did great. Your portfolio was only down 25%. You beat the benchmark. It was an accurate statement, but it didn't give comfort to anyone. So instead, the conversation had to change. It had to go from how did I do to how am I doing? Because at the end of the day, money has a purpose. It has a job to do. And so how am I doing in getting funded towards this objective that I'm trying to achieve became the more realistic and practical question to ask. And it put both the investor and their advisor in a position where they could control the controllable. You and I can't control whether markets go up or down, but if we know keep our focus on what is the end objective for this money, we can measure how much progress have they made toward the goal, or how much did this volatility set them back, and then again, what do we need to do to get back on track?
All right, Pat, with that in mind, help our viewers and listeners think about what qualities should they be looking for in a wealth management advisor as opposed to E-Trade or Ameritrade or whoever they're thinking about doing their trades with.
Excellent question. Because this is all new since the two bear markets in a decade, not every financial professional is on board with the change yet. Mm-hmm. So from an investor point of view, looking to hire someone to work with them, I would say start with what is their title. Is their title financial advisor, or is their title wealth management advisor? Mm-hmm. But don't stop there, because titles can be deceiving. I would look next for credentials. If it's a sole practitioner, are they a certified financial planner? Or if it's a team approach, is there a certified financial planner on the team? And then finally, if you're really serious about interviewing this person to work with, I'd ask for an initial meeting. And then keep your ears open during the initial meeting to see how comprehensive the questions are that you're being asked regarding your needs, your wants, and your dreams. Because if all the questions seem to revolve around your portfolio and not your life, then chances are they're still in the thought process of how did I do rather than how am I doing.
Very interesting distinguishment. So, given that, and given the change in maybe how you're going to look at the advisor, how does me as the novice coming in to see the wealth management person understand how they're going to customize basically for my own risk appetite and my own dreams, and how do I judge whether they really can do that?
Very good question, Paul. When you're going to sit down and work with such a person, I would say the best way to do that is to work with them, to be open and honest about your goals, about your concerns, about your assets, and about your liabilities. But I wouldn't stop there. I would say you really need to go forward and discuss with this individual what potentially disruptive issues could come up to ruin the plan. For example, you could be working with your advisor diligently towards building a retirement lifestyle to which you'd like to become accustomed and have the whole plan ruined because suddenly there are aging parents who are relying on you for their own financial stability. If these potentially disruptive events are out in the open, they can be planned for. And oftentimes contingency planning can negate surprises.
The different people have different levels of risk, and a lot of times they don't even know what their risk tolerance is until a 2008 comes along. So how do you get off on the right foot with a client to make sure you're going to really know what their risk tolerance is and get them prepared for what might happen?
Very good question. Any good advisor takes the time to really understand the investor. And it's not just their risk tolerance, it's also their investment personality, as well as their time horizons, because different objectives have different time horizons. And I believe that you have to have a handle on all three: the investment personality, the tolerance for risk, and the time horizon, in order to put together a strategy that meets all three. And that's fundamental to establishing an essential partnership relationship with your professional.
So you've established this partnership with the professional, and you're looking to make progress towards goals. How are the investment decisions handled? How much input does the investor have? How much input does the advisor have? How collaborative is the process? How solution-oriented are all the different pieces that need to be fit together?
Paul, you just said the whole thing in a nutshell. Let's go back. I said one of the key elements to wealth management is the creation of strategies that meet the client's life goals. With the client's life goals in mind, the wealth manager may recommend to the particular investor one strategy or multiple strategies. For example, you could have one strategy to provide for tuition expenses needed in 4 years, and a totally different strategy for funding retirement in 20 years at a lifestyle of X. Now, the investor is always in control, and because they are always in control, this is a collaborative relationship. They are free to say yes or no to any given strategy. But understand that a strategy discussion is a whole lot bigger than which stock to buy and which stock to sell. And the wealth manager has to always take into consideration the risk tolerance of the individual they're working with. So I see wealth managers distinguishing himself, herself, on their ability to truly understand the goals of the client, the risk tolerance of the client, and be able to have strategies that are aligned with those objectives. This is an ongoing relationship, and it's something where there's periodic updates to measure what has been the progress to date.
Quite often I find that clients don't really know how much money they are spending and how much they're going to have to spend in retirement. Do you have a process that helps them to get a handle on that, or at least be aware of how their progress is toward making sure they'll have enough?
Exactly. Of course, the client statement is always a wonderful tool, okay? Because it shows money in, money out, money earned, money lost.
Yeah.
But beyond that, since the conversation is revolving around how am I doing,
Yeah.
when the advisor is asked that question and they've identified the different strategies for different purposes, they can post reports on the client's online access to their accounts. Now, at Merrill Lynch, we call that My Merrill. Other firms have their own name for it. But the client can go in and see the report and see, oh, I'm 50% funded. Oh, that volatility was positive in 2013. Now I'm 62% funded. We got ahead of ourselves. Secondly, the portfolio review. Every advised client should have a formal portfolio review at a minimum of once a year. And that's an excellent time to sit down with your advisor and discuss any life changes that have happened for you since the last review, and also to review what the progress has been since the last portfolio review.
Well, speaking of life changes, maybe you could talk about how things can come out and disrupt, such as disability, sickness, all kinds of, people can all of a sudden find they don't have a job. How do you, as a wealth advisor, help the client when one of these things gets thrown in the path of actually achieving their goals?
Well, we've had 5 years of that now.
Haven't we,
Haven't we ever?
Yeah.
And as I said, whole careers were downsized. And we've done a lot of work working with our clients to provide safety nets. And sometimes that safety net, while they're still working, they have not yet been downsized, is to redo the mortgage, get them to an interest-only mortgage so we can reduce the amount of cash flow flowing out. If they are already in a period of transition, we do a lot of work with lines of credit against their personal assets. We do an awful lot in the area of long-term care coverage, sometimes for the client, sometimes for their parents. So we do a lot of contingency planning because life is an unknowable game. That's why I asked them to be upfront with me.
Pat, in the minute or so remaining, do you try to pull the whole family into this planning? I know it's a tough thing to do to get the second and third generations, but it seems like that's an important thing to do.
Actually, this shift in the industry, I think, is very, very beneficial for families. Mm-hmm. The reason I say that, and I do feel it's a permanent shift, it's not a fad, it's not something that'll be passing, is now more than ever, there is a need for a human connection. Investors want to be heard. They want to be understood. Many have faced serious financial setbacks. Many are worried about whether or not they'll outlive their money and about their children becoming financially stable. A wealth management approach is a household approach. So you're working with the parents, you've done the same, and when they're working with an essential partner, they tend to talk about it. And then the adult children want this too, but on their own, they may not have the assets to qualify to work with a wealth management advisor.
Right.
But because we work on a household basis, we can include smaller accounts. Minimums are waived. They get the same break points on the fees that the parents get. So I see this spidering out through families.
Excellent. Unfortunately, we're going to have to end there. I know we could spend a lot more time discussing this topic. Next week, our guest is Scott Mester from Sales Evolution. He's going to be talking about the sales process. And I also want to let you know that Money Matters is now available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And for all of you who are radio listeners there, we want to welcome you. And the video is available on our YouTube channel as well as our website, www.money-matterstv.com. And from all of us here at Money Matters TV, your money matters.
Roll the credits. Good show.